Welcome into the debut edition of When the Game Ends. My name is Ben Holden, joined by my co-host and ultimately the creator of this podcast, Mike Carman. Carmy, it's good to see you. I think it's only been 13 years, man.
Only 13 years. Time flies. I don't know if you can give me full credit. I say we're 50-50 on this. I think we just had the idea simultaneously.
Yeah, and it's funny how these things happen, right? You and I were texting one night and we got going back and forth talking about, I think the Gophers probably, of course, where Mike played, and you and I met in Lake Erie in 2009, which we'll get into, and it kind of spawned from there. And I love the concept. I want you to tell the audience what the thought process is behind this, and ultimately what the end goal of doing this podcast is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I did try podcasting a few years ago. Had a hockey podcast going with a buddy, and it was fun, and I really enjoy that aspect of it because in the back of my head, I kind of always wanted to do something that was broadcasting related or whether it's podcasting, whatever it is. But the the idea was let's find something different. Let's find something that we can create a niche with. Let's be outside the box, not just be another hockey podcast, right? And obviously that's where our connection has been is hockey. And that's where we're going to start with this. But I think we both have ambitions and goals to take it beyond that. And the way our difference or the way we're looking at this is we're not here to go in and hash out the games that are going on every week. We're not trying to be another spit and chicklets or anything like that. I think what we're trying to find is that connection with guys about the transition and where the name comes from. Ben, you get credit for that one. When the game ends,
Team effort.
team effort, fair enough. But when the game ends and what that means and what it looks like. And for me, and I think we'll get into this, I think, a little bit as we go on this first episode. Not everybody handles it very well. And some guys worse than others. I don't think myself personally, I was at the far end of the spectrum of, certain stories I've heard and things that guys have gone through, but it's still a transition. It's still something that I think even if you're ready for, which I wasn't in fairness, but if you're ready for it, I think there's always going to be that something missing for a while there for you. And so I think getting that message out and having the opportunity to talk about it, and not just with hockey players and any professional athlete, just if that even that one episode or 5-10 minutes of somebody tuning in and listening, if it can help someone like, get that perspective and know that they're not in this alone, I think that's where we're going with this.
And I love that because I harken back to the days 20 years ago when I was a reporter in Lansing, Michigan. And one of the things that when you're a reporter, as you know, you're a player, but you still know how this stuff works. You have to kind of sometimes you can't just take the stories that are served up like a pizza, like we would say, use a hockey term. You got to go out and you got to find stories. And one of the things that I love about calling games still is the human interest side, and that's exactly what this is. And that's one of the things that really appeals to me because there's so many things about a person that you may not know. You may look at them and say, oh, well, this guy scored 40 goals or this or whatever. But when you really get to know people, and it's like the old adage, Carmi, you see these placards on social media, be kind, you don't know what someone's going through. And I pulled up a story an hour ago before you and I jumped on here, and it talks about the psychology of retirement. And one of the biggest things I took away from that was athletes seemingly have to retire twice because, like in your case, and I want you to talk to this from probably as young as you can remember, as little as you were, your dream was to be an NHL player and play for 10 or 12 years, right?
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Yeah, and Apple Valley, Minnesota, the guys from hockey country, right? I mean, it's a given. So we know that those are dreams and aspirations that anyone that puts a pair of skates on is from an area of the country like that, or Canada, or wherever they're from, and that's their dream. And sometimes it doesn't happen. And even when it does happen, it's not just that some guys don't get there. You still put in the work, and you put in a lot of time in your career. You put in 5 years playing as a pro, and it's hard to walk away from that. What was the hardest thing you found when you decided ultimately, I'm done playing, man? I got to go do something else.
Yeah, I mean that it might be tough to pinpoint just one thing. I think my biggest issue that I had going was I didn't have a plan. I retired way earlier than I thought, just like you said. I mean, it was kind of, it's one of those things where all I'd ever thought about, like most guys that I grew up playing with, all I ever thought about was playing hockey. All I ever wanted to do was, make the varsity team in high school, play for the Gophers, get drafted, go play and try to work your way into an NHL lineup. And it's that feeling that you failed when it doesn't happen, I think was what I really had the hardest time with. That I felt like, because again, your goal is to get here and you get here or
Yep.
whatever level it is, and you look at it as I failed because I didn't get to that end destination that you wanted. So I think that was probably that feeling of I failed. And then twofold to that, I had no idea what I wanted to do after that. So trying to figure that out,
Hmm.
and figure out, just what the next step was going to be, where my next paycheck was going to come from. Just there was a lot of stress at that time.
Yeah. So I want to read a little bit from this one article that I found. It says the average professional athlete will likely retire before they hit 30. How old were you?
26.
26. According to research in this study, the average retirement age for MLB players was 29 and a half years old, followed by NHL players, 28.2 years old, 28 for NBA players, and 27 and a half for NFL players. So those numbers, I mean, you look at a guy like Tom Brady, it's like, how the hell did he play till he was 45? I mean, Aaron Rodgers is still playing. He's 40 years old. Sidney Crosby just re-signed a contract. He's your age. I mean, I think he's
Yeah.
37 now. And when you're in the moment, is that what you think about? Like, are you thinking about, hey, I'm going to play till I'm 35? What's it like? Take me
I
inside the mind.
I don't think I ever thought I was going to play till I was 40. I mean, those guys are just wired differently. I loved hockey and worked hard at it, but I mean, you have to have a different type. Well, A, I mean, look at the talent level of the guys we just talked about too, right? But B, you have to have a different type of drive and commitment that at a certain point you are going to put hockey and diet and nutrition and working out, everything is at a premium and you are getting as, taking in as much as you can in order to keep yourself at that level. So I mean, I guess me personally, I was hoping to play till I was 30. That was always what I thought. I'm like, if I can get to 30, I figured by that point, whether it be a veteran status in the AHL or overseas or whatever it was, that I'd be at a comfortable point where when I retired, I felt like, okay, I've made a couple bucks. I'll be ready to kind of just, I don't have to rush into anything, right? Now, of course, I did the exact opposite that. And basically was still working out. That it was 2014, that summer. I still trained all summer trying to get a contract, get a deal, figure out what was going to work, and ultimately made the decision to be done, which was extremely difficult. But that, it is what it is. It comes quick. It goes quick and it comes quick. And you look back on playing hockey for that long in your life or any sport, at that point, so 26, I mean, I started playing hockey when I was like 3 or 4, right? So it's a
Yeah.
long time and it goes by so quick. And that's the thing I try to, because I coach now, I try to let players know you got to take it all in and don't take anything for granted.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle when I have a week away. I mean, and you because and I know from being around you guys and being around the program and the pro game, I meant to say, in the college game's different, but being around the pro game, it's like you have that structure. So where did you turn? What did you do initially? Like maybe even the first 3 months. Give me a short term of what you did when you had to transition out of, okay, the skates are hung up, man. I'm going to play in a men's league. That's all I'm going to play in now. And I'm done being a pro. What did you do? And what was it like those first few weeks?
So I kind of I had the option to go coach right away. So there's a good amount of programs in Minnesota that have year-round type training stuff, and you can go work there as like a full-time job essentially. So one of my good buddies growing up, his dad ran one, and he had reached out and asked me if I wanted to come coach. And for me, I'm like, yeah, because like we just talked about, I don't have a plan. I don't, I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from. Like, I need to figure things out and start making money and figure out, what the next step is, right? So
Yep.
I coached for it was about 9, 10 months. Kind of was it wasn't the right fit. That's all I'll say. I don't really want to go into too many details about it, but it just wasn't the right fit. I wasn't ready to be at a rink every day. that actually made it much harder.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so that first, but I will tell you something that helped me with the transition was bandy. And I don't know if I talked to you about that at all or not, Ben, before,
No.
but so bandy's a sport that's huge overseas in like Scandinavian countries and Russia. Those are kind of they're the big 3 or 4 or 5 countries that play it. They have professional leagues over there.
Wow.
And so the US has a very small pocket in Minnesota here that sends a team over to play in the World Championships every year. And by no means are we winning that tournament, but but you're on skates, it's on a soccer field size sheet of ice. You're playing with a stick that is waist high, like a field hockey size,
Oh, wow.
and a ball. And it is all about skating. You put longer steels on your skates, there's no checking.
Hmm.
Um, it's very much a skill possession game, similar to like a soccer in that fashion, where you're constantly possessing and trying to find the right lanes, kick it back, reverse it, and you send these long balls launching up over just like you would in soccer for guys. So it was a very different game for me, but it was something that I put all of my energy into away from like just to have something to commit to and be around.
Hmm.
And so I did that I still play summers and winters once a week. We have leagues here, but I went overseas for 5 years in a row when I got done playing with that for about 2 weeks in the spring every year. And
Huh.
that was really helpful.
Wow. That's interesting.
And,
And I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever watched it. I don't know much about it except for what you're telling me. So that's
well,
pretty.
well, when we start posting clips, I can send you some of these Russian guys and the stuff that they're able to do and the speed. It's speed you've never seen before. I remember the first tournament I went over there, and I'm like, I just got done playing minor league hockey. There's no way like I've seen some of the best skaters in the world, or I thought I had,
Yeah.
and you see these guys just flying, and I'm like, oh my God, it's incredible to watch.
Wow. So when you went through that transition, who did you talk to? Who did you vent to, or did you keep it self contained? What was that process like for you?
For me, I've had a core group of friends around me that, came out and watched me play in Lake Erie and Hershey and Wilkes-Barre, one or two that made sure to come out multiple times a year. So I had a very core group of buddies that I had had for a long time. And it was a lot of, spending time around them. Um, I remember the day I decided to be done, I went out golfing with one of them the next day and we had a few pops on the course, but it was just kind of like trying to decompress and download about it, right? But to be honest, I didn't talk to people enough about it. I tried to internalize a lot of it because I didn't, to me, I felt like I was like whining or complaining. And it's like,
Right.
like you said, like people don't see it that way necessarily. They're like, what are you complaining about? Like you got to do this, whatever, whatever. My dad is probably the one who snapped me out of it
Hmm.
because we talked. Well, we're gonna dive into the weeds a little more here. So
That's
part
good.
of part of what made the transition tough, I went through a divorce, right, basically a separation right when I got done playing, maybe 6 months later.
Hmm.
We separated. There was already some issues, not anything serious, but just like it wasn't working. And so we separated and went through a divorce all within that first year of being done. And for me, that was like, well, the person that, normally you'd be able to kind of share that with a little bit. We were just at odds with it. And to be honest, things are great today. Completely amicable. We see each other at certain things periodically and we're just fine. But so that was going on too. So not only do I not have an
A
idea of
lot.
what I want to do, that was going on, and I'm just kind of lost, I guess is probably the best way to put it. And my
Mhm.
dad, I don't know if he sensed something was up or I'm not sure exactly what caused him to do it, but he invited me out. He's like, hey, let's go grab some beers and catch up whenever. I'm like, yeah, sounds good. And I will never forget what he told me. He goes, you have this all wrong in your head. Like you think you failed. Like we talk about, that's where I
Yep.
have the fail thing
Yep.
from. You think you failed? Do you realize how lucky you were, like to experience the things you got to experience? And we talked through that, and that I think set me kind of like on the path. Okay, like put everything in perspective, digest that, and then start, moving forward from there.
Dads are
So
great
that
that way,
was,
aren't they?
yeah. Well, I mean, I just told him that the other day. Actually, we were chatting about something, and I brought it up to him, and I think he was a little surprised that stuck with me that much, but it was definitely something that helped.
That's awesome, man. So at what point for you can you go back and think like you finally were, I mean, you may never be at peace with it, but do you,
I
well,
can safely say I'm at peace with it. Yes, I am
you
at peace
are
with it. 100%. Yes.
good. So at what point for you was that, did you feel at peace?
Um, it's hard to pinpoint that. Um, my wife I'm married to, we've been we 4 years in November. We've been dating for almost six. She's been awesome. Just we've just little things like we go to the Gopher hockey games, season ticket holders every weekend. Look forward to stuff like that where I'm around the game in a positive environment, a positive way, and I enjoy seeing old teammates and alumni and things like that. So that's really fun. But yeah, I mean, since we've been together, I mean, I kind of shared things throughout the years as they come up. Sometimes something will kind of jog a memory or whatever. But so I don't know if I can pick an exact time. I think just it is time. It's starting to, you know, you're not looking at it. Let me backtrack a little bit. I think when people like when I had buddies that were still playing, and
Yep.
I still have a couple, but not as many as I used to. That was one of the hardest things when I'd see guys and I'm like, I played with this guy forever, or I've known him forever, or this guy's still playing, or this guy got called up to the NHL. You'd see that, and that was hard.
I
So I think
bet.
that's part of it too, as years went along, it was like less and less you were seeing that. And then and at the same time, I was always happy for my buddies. It was never like, oh, whatever, like I'm mad at this guy or anything like that. I was always
Right.
happy and rooting for all my buddies. And that's still the way I am today. The ones that are still playing, like I'm excited for him. Like, grew up playing with the Poso. I
Yep.
was so happy for him when he won with Florida because he's gone through so much and he's had a long career, and to get it done in his last year is awesome. So stuff like that is really fun, and I truly get to enjoy seeing that stuff now. I don't have any feelings of God, I wish that had been me, or like whatever. It's like I'm just happy to be watching these guys.
Yeah, and there's a guy that I think he might be the only guy that's still playing left that we were together for 2 years. Mike and we met when Mike was a Colorado pick, third round pick, and 09, 10, and then 10, 11, we were together in Lake Erie. And in your old pal Stoa, I mean, is he still playing?
Yeah, he's been overseas since, oh my God, probably 2016 maybe. I think and again, I might botch some of these numbers a little bit because I'm doing it by memory, but
It's all right.
he played about 4 or 5 years in the KHL.
Yeah.
And I know he was in the Swedish league, I think for two, and I think the last two he's been in Germany.
Okay.
So he's still going as far as I know. I don't know if I think he's back over there now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's he's had a very long career, and it's fun to see that.
Yeah, and always loved being around him too, man. He was always great to me. And I mean, I have that our second year together. I don't think there's anyone left playing, man, unless any of these guys.
Well, I don't know briefly, but part of the year, he went up at some point. Barry's still playing
But
Tyson.
Tyson, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
But other than that, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that's still going. So
No. So, like, who were you closest with when we were together? Like, we knew each other, but I didn't like know exactly who was hanging out with who and all that. But like, who were you closest with? A couple guys that you were closest with on those couple years, your first 2 years as a pro? Because I'm going
we had
somewhere
such
with this.
we had such a young team. And I remember I think we had 8 or 9 rookies that first year,
There's a
that first
lot.
full year. And God, did we have fun together. Just a fun group of guys. But I spent a lot of time with Luke
Luke
Walker.
Walker, yep,
And then his roommate was Chouinard.
yep,
So I saw those two, they lived in the same complex, so I'd see them a lot. Mark Oliver came in with us. Merce and I hung out a lot, who I
yep,
obviously know you stay in touch with, Justin
yep,
Mercier.
yep.
Um, yeah, I mean, and then I knew Stowe already, so he was up and down that year though too, so he wasn't there the whole time. Shaddy and I roomed together,
I didn't know
and
that.
then yeah, well, we got sent down at the same time from training camp and with the Avs, and so we came down and we're like we knew each other enough. We're like, let's get an apartment together. So we basically figured that out on like the car ride from the airport that we're gonna get an apartment together. but then he got called up 10 games in and then traded halfway through the year and he never came back. So
Yep.
my task was to drive around his car once a month. He had a Porsche Cayenne to make sure it didn't lock up or die on him. And then I had to ship out some of his stuff, and I bought his TV off him, and the rest is history.
Great. So the reason I asked that is Shaddy retired now, or is he still hanging around?
He he has not retired. I don't think he's been signed yet though. I don't know if he's on a PTO in camp or
Okay.
something right now, but as far as I know, he is not signed for.
Okay.
I think his contract ended last year.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So the reason I ask you that is like, have you had conversations like you're telling me like you had to go through with some of these guys? I mean, you and I haven't seen each other in 13 years. You've been retired for 10 years. So if those conversations come up with guys, and how's that went if so?
I would say actually the most recent one I had was with Merce. And it was probably it was like a year and a half ago now. I was down in Nashville and I went over. He came and picked me up from my hotel, and I went and hung out with him in Chelsea for the day before
Mm-hmm.
I caught my flight that night. And we caught up a little bit about because I hadn't. His thing was kind of like, well, why did you stop playing when you did and whatever. And so we got into that whole conversation, and we just talked about like the opportunities that were there, and that we were close, and we had we always joke around about our penalty killing
Oh, you guys were
that year.
unreal together.
We're like, we should have been a tag team. We should have just signed dual contracts everywhere we went, and that's our job.
Yep, you guys were
Um,
damn good at that.
but yeah, and then I talked, and again, I want to be a little careful too, privacy wise, with certain guys I talk
I
with,
understand.
obviously. But we do a Gopher alumni reunion every year. Well, we do like a big giant one at a golf course that everybody comes to, but then my class, Stowe's class, and then the class above him, which is like Gordo, for example, was in that class, Ben Gordon.
Yep.
And then Wheeler Stowe is Goligoski was in that class. We all get together and go up north and golf for a few days and have a good time. And Stowe and I chatted, kind of burning the midnight oil the one night. We were just talking about transitioning out of hockey a little bit. So it does come up time to time. And as we all get older, you get more perspective on it. And it's usually can be a generally positive conversation,
Yeah.
but it's kind of just asking those questions like, when you get done, like what's next, right?
What do you find most guys say?
Well, in terms of what they want to do next.
Yeah, is it like Tommy Boy where they have no idea, or is it like
No,
what?
well, it depends on the guy. I mean, I've played with some guys, they were taking real estate, like corporate real estate type like tests and things like that.
Yeah.
So they were, ready for the transition. Like I'm gonna go into real estate, or real estate, I think was a common one. Some of the guys that went to college like had gone to getting finance degrees, so they knew they were gonna try to go into that world. That's a pretty common one. I think most of us found our way into sales. Um, Stoa's got his own fishing business with a guy down in Florida. And
Nice.
that's where he lives full time now when he's home. I guess full time he's in Europe more than anything. Um, but yeah, so I think that's definitely a, plan for the future. He'll have that. He's always been an outdoors guy and fisherman. So I think that's something that he'll focus around. But yeah, I mean, I think unless you planned ahead in terms of, like I said, taking a test for something where you'll be licensed and certified to do that job when you get out, it's just kind of finding your way. But I would say 90% of the guys I talk to find their way into sales. A lot of medical sales.
Hmm.
Um, Tech sales now is a big one with guys. And that was funny for me because when I went coached for the first couple years on and off different things. And then I wanted to get into sales at 29 years old. And I'm like, I don't have a resume that says anything that I can do this, right? So on my head, I'm like, well, how do I even apply for a job like this? But what I've learned is, a lot of companies are interested in hiring athletes for those roles, former athletes. And I think that definitely gives guys a little bit more confidence,
Hmm.
when they transition out, knowing that that's a path or an avenue for them. I also know what's cool is a lot of schools now, if they have a big enough alumni network, that alumni network is trying to make themselves more present and give guys that outlet or opportunity. If it's like, hey, if you're looking for a job, we can connect you with this recruiter. Or if you want to get in this line of work, like talk to this guy who's an alumni, and try to give avenues of support that way too, which is great.
Yeah, because you and I've you probably know guys that they've got horror stories, and we were talking offline, look at a guy like Andre Rison. I just dealt with him last week. He's a great NFL receiver, arguably could be in the Hall of Fame. The guy was literally broke when he retired. And I'm not picking on him. I was so impressed dealing with him for a couple days. I was blown away how sharp he was. And, there's a guy I worked with doing Major League Rugby, which I've gotten into, a guy named Will Hooley, who's become a great friend. He just made the transition last year. And so it's a very difficult thing because, again, for me, I can't relate as an athlete. I have my struggles as a broadcaster, but I'm still in the game, man. So it's different in that way. And there's
Well, I want to
just
be clear about something too, is I am certainly not putting myself in a category of, like I said, there are all different types of levels of
oh
transition.
yeah.
And I would say mine was pretty typical for a guy retiring early. Like again, nothing seriously bad was happening. I wasn't, into drugs or having those kind of issues, anything like that. Um, but there are guys, they have different levels of bottom they have to hit before they can come back from it, right? I mean, you read
Yeah.
all the stories and feel like the one you're talking about, like he probably felt like, as low as he could ever have felt in his life. And
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Yeah, it's sad. Well, how do you feel we've done here and kind of getting out what we want to do here? I mean, is this
Well,
kind of what you
if
thought it would
if
be
the
like?
people if people aren't tired of hearing me talk this episode, then I think we're okay. Um, no, I think that's exactly kind of what we're looking for, right? We want to have those types of conversations with people and be able to ask the questions that are going to prompt them to let them talk, right? We don't want to be the ones talking the whole time. We want to get people, comfortable with us and sharing their stories and getting it out there, because the more and more different stories that we can get out there, again, that's going to connect for somebody. That's going to hit for some people where they're like, "Oh my God, this is how exactly what I dealt with or exactly how I was feeling." Um, yeah, so I mean, I think we've already put together a pretty good list of guys that we want to get on. We've both reached out to some people already. Um, yeah, I mean, we can tease the first one, is what we're going to do.
I'll let you do that, man. You booked him, so he's your guy.
Well, so the first guy we're going to have on, and it was a guy that I played with in Wilkes-Barre my last year, but he had quite a long career. He played about 15 different years, pretty much in every league you can play in. He played in the UHL, the ECHL, the AHL, the NHL. He played some games in the LNAH in Quebec there, which is just a Wild West league. I
Oh
I want to
boy.
hear stories about that.
Yes.
And so it's Pierre-Luc Letourneau LeBlanc, PL or PL3 as he was commonly referred to when it's too many names to spit out. But just an incredible guy, as you know, Ben, too. Like so many of the enforcers that people have never met before are tough guys like that.
Yeah.
They look scary as hell from an outside perspective, but they are some of the nicest, most like genuine, like good people to be around. And so him and I have, I wouldn't say we've kept in touch super well, but we've exchanged some messages because he's in the youth hockey coaching world now. And so we've talked a few times here and there, but I fired him a text about what we were doing, and 30 seconds later, yeah, dude, I'm in. Send me the link to when you guys record your
Cool.
first show and then let me know when you're ready. So he should have some great stories. Like I said, over 600 games pro, 20, almost 2,500 career penalty minutes. So he's gonna have some good stories for us that we can get going with him on. And I know he did a little bit of the real estate when he got done. Like I know he's doing some coaching in the youth hockey now. So yeah, we'll get to hear some perspectives with him because I mean he played East Coast League games as late as last year or 2 years ago, I think. It looked like only one or two when I looked him up. So I want to hear what brought that about. Called him out of retirement or so it should be
Right
good.
on. Well, that's great, man. Well, I'm glad we've connected to do this. I think we're going to have a lot of great people on, and like you said, man, ultimately, we want to help people. Hey, if we help one person in this thing, I feel like we've accomplished something. So I'm glad you and I connected on this, and we got one under our belt. You're a natural, Carmen. You were always a great interview. I knew you'd be great at this.
Well, I'm excited to be doing this again. Like it was this if the stars aligned when you and I were talking
Yep.
because and this all started because I was gonna be out in your area and I was coaching for a youth
Yep.
team out there and we tried to meet up.
Yep.
Didn't work out, schedules just didn't make sense. Um, but so then just to be talking about this and you bringing up podcasting, and I was like, well, actually, I've been thinking about this for a while. And it's something that, again, I felt like was a niche that wasn't being hit. And again, we're not just going to do hockey, right?
Yep.
We're going to cross over in other sports and have those conversations because, the reality of this is the transition out of sports is, you can make the same story for 7, 8 different professional sports where people have similar experiences. So I think that's what's really unique and cool about what we're going to try to do. And I'm excited about it. And just again, selfishly get to catch up with some guys too, in that regard and shoot the shit a little bit.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. So that's going to put a bow on the first episode. Good with that?
All good.
All right. For Mike Carman, Ben Holden saying thanks for watching the maiden voyage of When the Game Ends. We'll see you next time with an all new edition right here.